My name is Dorothy Mae Henderson, and at 73 years old, I thought I had life figured out. I was wrong. Dead wrong. What I discovered during 2 hellish months in Sunset Manor Nursing Home changed everything I believed about aging. Dignity and the power we surrender without even realizing it. Asterisk. But before I tell you about the horror that awaited me, behind those sterile walls, let me paint you a picture of who I was before everything fell apart. Asterisk. For 53 years, I was married to Harold Henderson, a gentle soul who sold insurance and never missed Sunday service at First Baptist Church. We raised 4 children in our little white house on Maple Street: Margaret, James, Ruth, and little Thomas, who never quite grew tall, but had the biggest heart of them all. Asterisk. I prided myself on being independent. Every morning at 5:30 a.m., I'd rise to make Harold's coffee just the way he liked it: 2 sugars, no cream. I tended my garden where prize-winning tomatoes grew fat and red under the summer sun. I volunteered at the Church Ladies Auxiliary, organized bake sales, and never missed a grandchild's birthday party. Asterisk. When Harold passed 3 years ago from a sudden heart attack, everyone expected me to crumble. Poor Dorothy, they'd whisper. At the grocery store, however will she manage? Asterisk. But I showed them. I kept that house spotless, paid my bills on time, and even learned to use one of those computer contraptions to video call my grandchildren. I was managing just fine. Thank you very much. Or so I thought. It happened on a Tuesday morning in March. I was reaching for Harold's old coffee mug on the top shelf. I still used it every morning. You see, when my foot caught on the kitchen rug, the world spun sideways and I crashed to the linoleum floor with a sickening crack. Asterisk. The pain in my hip was unlike anything I'd ever experienced. It felt like someone had driven a railroad spike through my bones. I lay there for what felt like hours, crying out for help that wouldn't come. My neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, finally heard me through the thin walls and called the ambulance. Asterisk. At the hospital, Dr. Williams, a young man who looked barely old enough to drive, let alone practice medicine, delivered the verdict with clinical detachment: fractured hip, Mrs. Henderson. You'll need surgery and extensive rehabilitation. Asterisk. The surgery went well, they told me. But what came next would haunt me for the rest of my days. Asterisk. Margaret, my eldest, flew in from Phoenix the day after my surgery. She'd always been the take-charge type, even as a little girl. While her siblings played with dolls, Margaret organized them into elaborate scenarios with rules and hierarchies. Asterisk. Mother, she said, settling into the uncomfortable hospital chair with her briefcase and tablet, we need to discuss your living situation. Asterisk. I should have seen the warning signs then. The way she avoided eye contact. How she'd already printed out brochures for senior living communities before she'd even asked how I was feeling. Asterisk. I'm going home, Margaret, I told her firmly. Dr. Williams says I'll need some physical therapy, but asterisk. Mother, be realistic. She spread the glossy brochures across my hospital bed like tarot cards predicting doom. You can't manage that big house anymore. What if you fall again? What if next time no one finds you? Asterisk. Fear is a powerful weapon, and Margaret wielded it like a master swordsman. Asterisk. 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 If you're enjoying Dorothy's story and want to hear more life-changing experiences from seniors who've been where you are, make sure to subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us share these important stories. Asterisk. Over the next 3 days, as I lay helpless in that hospital bed, Margaret orchestrated what I now recognize as a carefully planned campaign. She called my other children, painting dire pictures of their mother's declining mental state. Asterisk. She's becoming stubborn and unreasonable. I heard her tell James over the phone, she can't see that she's a danger to herself. Asterisk. She contacted my bank, claiming concern about my ability to manage finances. She spoke with my doctor about my obvious confusion and poor judgment. Each conversation felt like another thread being cut from the web of my independence. Asterisk. When she presented Sunset Manor's brochure, she made it sound like a luxury resort. Asterisk. Look, Mother, they have activities, nutritional meals prepared for you, medical staff on site 24 hours a day. You'll make new friends. It'll be like a cruise that never ends. Asterisk, I was tired. The pain medication made thinking difficult. Just maybe, a small part of me was scared of going home to that empty house where Harold's ghost seemed to lurk in every corner. Asterisk, just for a few weeks. I finally conceded, until I'm back on my feet. Margaret's smile was radiant with victory. Moving. Day arrived like an executioner's appointment. Margaret had already sorted through my belongings, deciding what was appropriate for my new living situation. 60 years of memories were reduced to 2 suitcases and a small box of photographs. Asterisk, you won't need all those kitchen gadgets anymore, Mother. Your gardening tools. The nursing home provides everything. Asterisk, my heart broke as I watched strangers load Harold's recliner onto a donation truck. Margaret held my wedding china service. For 12, my mother's pride and joy, and shook her head disapprovingly. Asterisk, this is far too much for your little room. I'll store it at my house. I never saw those dishes again. Sunset Manor sat on a hill overlooking the highway, a sprawling brick building that looked more like a prison than a home. The lobby smelled of disinfectant and something else I couldn't identify. Despair. Maybe ... Margaret chatted cheerfully with the admission staff while I sat in a wheelchair, suddenly feeling ancient and helpless. When had I become this frail creature who needed permission to live her own life? Asterisk, my room was 10 feet by 12 feet, painted institutional beige and containing 2 single beds. 2 dressers and a television mounted, too high on the wall. My roommate was Ethel Kowalski, an 89-year-old former schoolteacher who hadn't spoken a word in 6 months, according to the nurse. Asterisk, don't take it personally, honey, said Nurse Patricia, a woman my age who spoke to all the residents like they were mentally impaired children. Ethel's in her own little world now, but she's harmless. Asterisk, the rules were presented as helpful guidelines for healthy community living. But they felt like prison regulations. Asterisk, meals served at 7 a.m., 12 p.m., and 5 p.m. sharp. No exceptions. Lights out at 9 p.m. All medications dispensed by nursing staff only. Visitors must sign in and out. No food or drinks in rooms except water. All activities supervised by staff. Asterisk, no leaving. The premise is without family permission and staff escort. Asterisk. This is temporary, I reminded myself as Margaret kissed my forehead goodbye, just until I'm stronger. Asterisk. But as the days turned into weeks, I began to understand the terrible truth. Sunset Manor wasn't designed to help people get better. It was designed to manage people until they died. Asterisk, every morning began with the same soul-crushing routine. Fluorescent lights blazed to life, and Nurse Patricia's voice crackled over the intercom. Good morning, residents. Time to rise and shine. Asterisk's breakfast was served on plastic trays. Watery scrambled eggs, limp toast, and coffee that tasted like dishwater. We sat at assigned tables in the cafeteria while staff members hovered nearby, cutting food for those deemed incapable of handling a butter knife. Asterisk, I watched proud men and women, former teachers, business owners, mothers who'd raised families, being fed like infants. The staff meant well, I suppose, but their constant helping sent a clear message. You are no longer capable of caring for yourself. Asterisk. Physical therapy consisted of 15 minutes with an overworked therapist named Kevin, barely out of college, who moved me through basic exercises while checking his phone. When I suggested more challenging activities, he smiled condescendingly. Asterisk, now, says Henderson, we don't want you to overdo it. At your age, it's important to be realistic about limitations. Asterisk, my age. Those 2 words became a cage that trapped me more securely than any locked door. Asterisk, make no mistake, that's what we were. Prisoners serving life sentences for the crime of growing old. Asterisk, there was Robert Finnegan, 78. a former airplane mechanic whose hands had built engines but now shook too badly to button his own shirt. The staff insisted on dressing him each morning, though I'd watched him manage perfectly well when they weren't looking. Agnes Murphy, 81, had been a librarian for 40 years but was told she was too confused to choose her own books from the facility's meager collection. Instead, was given large print romances selected by a 19-year-old aide who thought all old ladies loved stories about heaving bosoms and mysterious dukes. And then there was Frank Delacroix, 75, whose only crime was developing diabetes. Late in life, his daughter had convinced the staff he was non-compliant with his diet. Every meal was monitored, every snack controlled. I watched this proud man, who'd owned 3 restaurants, beg for a single cookie like a child pleading for candy. These stories might be hard to hear, but they're happening in facilities across the country. If you believe seniors deserve better treatment, please join our community by subscribing together. We can make our voices heard. The most insidious part wasn't the rules or the bad food or even the condescending staff. It was how quickly you began to internalize their view of you. After 2 weeks, I found myself asking permission to walk to the bathroom. After 3 weeks, I stopped protesting when they insisted on cutting my meat. After a month, I was accepting help with tasks I could easily do myself, simply because it was easier than arguing. I watched other residents make this same transition. People who'd arrived angry and defiant gradually became docile and compliant. The fire in their eyes dimmed until they stared blankly at soap operas they didn't choose to watch, eating food they didn't want, living by schedules that served the staff's convenience rather than the residents' preferences. We were being systematically broken down, our independence stripped away piece by piece until we resembled the helpless stereotypes that had landed us here in the first place. 6 weeks into my stay, I woke at 2 a.m. to find Ethel sitting up in bed, staring out the window at the parking lot below. Can't sleep either, I whispered. She turned to me with eyes clearer than I'd seen since my arrival. I haven't spoken because I refuse to give them the satisfaction, she said in a voice rusty from disuse. But I can't stay silent anymore. For the next 3 hours, Ethel told me her story. She'd been a high school principal for 30 years, had raised 5 children as a single mother after her husband died in Vietnam, and had been living independently until her youngest son decided she was slipping mentally. 1 episode of confusion after starting new heart medication, she explained bitterly. 1 episode, and suddenly I'm incompetent to make my own decisions. She'd discovered that her son had gained legal guardianship while she was hospitalized for a minor procedure. He'd sold her house, liquidated her savings, and committed her to Sunset Manor indefinitely. The lawyer told me I could fight it, Ethel continued, but it would cost more money than I have access to. And who's going to believe a confused old woman over her concerned family? That night, lying in the darkness, I finally understood the magnitude of what had happened to me. This wasn't temporary. Margaret had never intended for me to go home. It's a few belongings she'd stored at her house. It's probably sold or donated. Weeks ago, my house on Maple Street, likely already on the market. I wasn't recovering from a fall. I was serving a life sentence for the crime of aging. The next morning, I made a decision that terrified me. I was going to fight back. It started small. When Nurse Patricia brought my morning medications, pills for conditions I wasn't sure I actually had, I asked to see the prescription labels. She looked annoyed. No, Mrs. Henderson, you don't need to worry about such things. The doctor knows what's best. Want to see the labels? I repeated firmly. I don't have time for this nonsense. Open your mouth, no. That single word hung in the air like a declaration of war. Other residents at nearby tables stopped eating and stared. The room fell silent except for the hum of fluorescent lights. Excuse me? I said no. I want to speak to the doctor about my medications. I want to see my medical records. And I want to call my lawyer. Nurse Patricia's face flushed red. Mrs. Henderson, you're being disruptive. If you don't take your medications, I'll have to note your non-compliance in your chart. Then note it, I said, my voice growing stronger with each word. Note that Dorothy May Henderson refuses to be medicated without informed consent. Note that she demands to see her medical records. And note that she's not as helpless as you'd like to believe. Word of my rebellion spread through Sunset Manor like wildfire. By lunch, other residents were approaching me with whispered questions and furtive glances. Robert Finnegan shuffled over during our supervised social time in the common room. Dorothy, he said quietly, do you really think we can do something about ... All this that afternoon, I organized the first meeting of what we came to call the Sunset Resistance. 7 residents gathered in the activity room during the staff's shift change when supervision was minimal. Agnes Murphy had smuggled in a notebook from the library cart. Frank Delacroix contributed a pen he'd borrowed from the nurses' station. Ethel provided strategic wisdom from her years as an administrator. We made a list of grievances. Medication administered without explanation. Financial decisions made without consultation, basic freedoms restricted without justification. And dignity stripped away through infantilizing treatment. More importantly, we made a plan. Over the next week, we implemented what we called Operation Dignity. It wasn't dramatic or confrontational. We were too smart for that. Instead, we used the system's bureaucracy against itself. Agnes, with her librarian skills, researched residents' rights laws at the facility's computer during her scheduled technology time. She discovered that many of the restrictions imposed on us were not legally required and, in some cases, violated state regulations. Robert used his mechanical expertise to accidentally break the lock on the activity room, giving us an unsupervised meeting space. His hands weren't nearly as unsteady as he pretended. Frank, drawing on his business experience, helped residents understand their financial statements and identify questionable charges. We discovered that several families were being billed for services never provided. Ethel drafted formal complaints to the state licensing board, using official language that couldn't be dismissed as the ramblings of confused seniors. And I became the voice of our revolution. The breakthrough came during my 3rd attempt to call an attorney. Previous calls had been monitored or accidentally disconnected. But Robert had figured out how to bypass the facility's phone restrictions. During the night security guards rounds, at 3 a.m., I dialed the number Agnes had found for the State Department of Health's Elder Abuse Hotline. Department of Health. How may I help you? My name is Dorothy May Henderson, and I'm calling to report systemic elder abuse at Sunset Manor Nursing Home. The intake worker, a woman named Sarah, listened as I detailed our situation. Medications forced without informed consent, financial exploitation, restriction of basic freedoms, and what amounted to imprisonment of competent adults. Mrs. Henderson. Sarah said when I finished, what you're describing is extremely serious. I'm going to connect you with our emergency response team. By dawn, I had provided detailed statements, resident names, and specific incidents to 3 different state agencies. The wheels of justice were finally turning. Stories like Dorothy's are happening across the country, but change is possible when we stand together. Hit that subscribe button to join our community of seniors fighting for dignity and rights. It's 2 weeks later, Sunset Manor received an unannounced inspection from the State Department of Health. The administrator, Mr. Williams, no relation to my doctor, was clearly unprepared for the team of investigators who arrived at 7 a.m. sharp. We'd coached our fellow residents on what to expect. When investigators interviewed residents privately, They heard story after story of dignity denied, rights violated, lives diminished. Asterisk, the inspection team discovered medication errors, inadequate medical documentation, financial irregularities, and violations of basic residents' rights. But the most damning evidence came from our carefully documented complaints and the testimony of competent residents who'd been labeled as incompetent. Agnes presented her research on state regulations. Frank provided financial documentation showing billing fraud. Robert demonstrated that his inability to perform basic tasks was largely manufactured by restrictive policies. Ethel's formal complaints showed clear patterns of systematic abuse. And I testified about the psychological warfare used to break down residents' sense of autonomy and self-worth. The results were swift and severe. Sunset Manor was placed on probation, fined $50,000, and required to implement immediate changes to policies and staff training. Several staff members were terminated, and the facility administrator was replaced. But more importantly, the investigation triggered reviews of other facilities in the state. Our little rebellion had sparked a much larger movement. For me personally, the victory was even sweeter. The investigation had revealed that Margaret's guardianship petition was based on fraudulent medical assessments and had never been properly filed. I was legally free to make my own decisions. On a crisp October morning, exactly 2 months and 3 days after entering Sunset Manor, I walked out the front door carrying the same 2 suitcases I'd arrived with. But I was not the same woman who'd entered. Margaret tried to reconcile, claiming she'd only wanted what was best for me. But trust, once broken, isn't easily repaired. I hired an attorney to recover my belongings and discovered that, yes, she had indeed put my house on the market without my consent. The legal battle took 6 months. But I eventually recovered my home and most of my belongings. Margaret and I now exchange Christmas cards. Nothing more. So what was the painful lesson I learned during those 2 terrifying months? It wasn't that nursing homes are inherently evil, or that all adult children are manipulative, or even that growing old is something to fear. The lesson was far more profound and far more frightening. We surrender our power gradually, often willingly, usually without realizing what we're giving up until it's gone. Every time I accepted help I didn't need, I reinforced the narrative that I was helpless. Every time I failed to challenge a restriction, I validated the belief that I couldn't make good decisions. Every time I remained silent in the face of indignity, I participated in my own diminishment. The painful truth is that society's treatment of seniors reflects what we accept for ourselves. If we act helpless, we'll be treated as helpless. If we surrender our autonomy piece by piece, no one will fight to preserve it for us. But here's the empowering flip side of that lesson. If we refuse to be diminished, if we demand to be treated with dignity, if we fight for our rights and freedoms, we can change not just our own lives, but the entire system. I'm writing this story 3 years later, at age 76, from my kitchen table on Maple Street. The same table where Harold and I shared coffee every morning for 53 years. My hip healed completely. I tend my garden again. Those tomatoes are still prize winners. I volunteer at a new organization I helped establish, the Senior Rights Advocacy Group. We help older adults understand their rights, recognize manipulation, and fight back against age discrimination. I still use Harold's coffee mug every morning. But now I can reach it easily. I had the kitchen cabinets lowered to a more practical height. Adaptation doesn't have to mean surrender. Agnes Murphy moved back to her own apartment and now runs the support group for families dealing with guardianship issues. Robert Finnegan returned to his workshop and recently rebuilt the engine on his 1967 Mustang. So much for shaky hands. Frank Delacroix opened a small cafe that serves real food for real people and has become a gathering place for seniors in the community. Asterisk and Ethel. Sweet, silent Ethel returned to substitute teaching, and at age 92 is pursuing her master's degree in gerontology online. She wants to help train the next generation of professionals who work with seniors. Asterisk, we stay in touch. Our unlikely friendship forged in the crucible of shared resistance. We call ourselves the Sunset Survivors, and we're working to ensure that what happened to us doesn't happen to others. Asterisk, if you're reading this and you're over 60, or if you have aging parents, please learn from my experience. Here are the warning signs that someone is trying to manipulate you into surrendering your independence. Asterisk, they use fear as a weapon. What if you fall again? What if something happens? Fear of hypothetical future problems shouldn't dictate present-day decisions. Asterisk, they make decisions without consulting you. Family members who contact your doctor, bank, or lawyer without your permission are overstepping boundaries, regardless of their intentions. Asterisk, they dismiss your preferences as unrealistic. Your desire to maintain independence isn't stubborn or unreasonable. It's a fundamental human right. Asterisk, they speak about you as if you're not present. When adult children discuss your situation with professionals while you're in the room, but don't include you in the conversation, they're already treating you as incompetent. Asterisk, they frame dependence as safety. True safety comes from maintaining as much independence as possible while addressing actual, not imaginary limitations. Asterisk, the most important thing I learned is that your fundamental rights as a human being don't diminish because you've reached a certain birthday. You have the right to, asterisk, make your own decisions even if others disagree with them. Asterisk, live where you choose, as long as you can safely do so. Control your own finances and medical care. Accept or refuse help based on your own assessment of CDs. Need take reasonable risks in pursuit of autonomy and happiness. Be treated with dignity and respect, regardless of your physical limitations. Asterisk. These rights don't disappear at 65, 75, or 95. They're not subject to a family vote or a doctor's opinion about what's best for you. Asterisk, the single most important word in maintaining your independence is no. Practice saying it. Use it liberally. Don't justify it. Don't apologize for it. Don't soften it with explanations. Asterisk, no, I don't want to move to assisted living. Asterisk, no, I don't need help with my finances. Asterisk, no, you may not speak to my doctor without me present. Asterisk, no, I will not sign documents I haven't read and understood. Asterisk. Your no is complete sentence. It doesn't require elaboration or defense. Asterisk, independence doesn't mean isolation. Build a network of people who support your autonomy rather than undermining it. Find friends who treat you as a peer, not a charity case. Connect with professionals, doctors, lawyers, financial advisors who respect your decision-making capacity. Join organizations where your experience and wisdom are valued. Maintain relationships with family members who support your independence. Asterisk. Distance yourself from people who consistently treat you as incompetent. Asterisk. Remember, it's better to have a small circle of people who respect you than a large network of people who pity you. Asterisk. I'm sharing this story not to frighten you, but to empower you. What happened to me was traumatic, but it taught me lessons that have made me stronger, more confident, and more determined to live fully. Asterisk. Aging is not a disease to be managed. It's a stage of life to be lived with the same dignity, autonomy, and respect you've always deserved. Asterisk. Don't let anyone convince you that growing older means giving up control over your own life. Don't accept diminished expectations or reduced freedoms as the natural price of aging. Asterisk. You are not a burden. You are not incompetent. You are not helpless. Asterisk. You are a human being with decades of experience, wisdom, and strength. You have survived loss, overcome challenges, and adapted to change. You have every right to continue doing so on your own terms. Asterisk. The world needs your voice, your experience, and your refusal to be marginalized. Don't let them silence you. Don't let them warehouse you. Don't let them convince you that your best days are behind you. Asterisk, fight for your independence. Demand dignity. Refuse to be diminished. And remember, it's never too late to reclaim your power. Stay strong, stay vigilant, and never ever give up. Asterisk with love and solidarity. Asterisk Dorothy Mae Henderson. Asterisk, Dorothy Mae Henderson is 76 years old and lives independently in her home of 60 years. She serves on the board of directors for the Senior Rights Advocacy Group and speaks regularly at conferences about elder rights and autonomy. She can still reach Harold's coffee mug on the top shelf. Thank you very much. Asterisk.